Yeah, so good evening. My name's Jamie Mason. I'm Assistant Principal Learning and Teaching at CRC Sydenham, and Josie Albano is also with me. She's our careers counsellor. Both of us will be presenting tonight to you on, I guess, an important component of the senior school, which is kind of thinking about pathways and what happens beyond school. So first of all, I can congratulate you on your attendance, because it means that you're kind of, I think, interested in finding out about how the senior school works. And for those of you who've had students at our school before, you may well have some of this knowledge, but I think it's an ever-changing space and environment. And I think as a parent of someone who's either in the senior secondary school or is coming to our school, it is quite important to have a bit of an understanding about the various pathway options. And as you can see from our slide here, one of the mantras at CRC Sydenham, which I believe we live authentically, is every student, every pathway. So I'm going to hand over to Josie, who's going to talk to you a little bit about those pathways.
Yeah, hi, good evening, everyone. So basically there are two main pathways through years 11 and 12 at Sydenham. So there's the VCE, and students can have the option of doing a scored VCE or an unscored VCE. And most students who are doing the VCE program are doing so that they can obtain an ATER and then go on and do a range of things, including university. There's also the VCAL option, and VCAL is designed to set you up to go on to either do a TAFE course, or some students come into the VCAL program knowing that they want to do an apprenticeship, and they can actually start their apprenticeship on sometimes while they're doing their VCAL program, but it also leads on to full-time work and apprenticeships and traineeships as well. And then sitting in between VCE and VCAL is a VET program. So basically a VET program is just another name for a certificate course, and students can choose to either do a scored or an unscored VET course, and that can also contribute towards their VCE program and also their VCAL program. So basically, what are my options when I finish year 12? So there's a couple of options. So option one, a student who's doing a scored VCE program with an ATAR will do that so that they can achieve their ATAR and gain entry into a university course. Option two is a VCE scored or unscored or VCAL students can also go on and do a diploma at TAFE, and upon that they can move into employment, or they can actually do their diploma course and then articulate into a university course as well. Then there's option three, which is a scored VCE, an unscored VCE or VCAL students. And after completing a unscored VCE or a VCAL program, students can move into a certificate two, also known as a pre-apprenticeship. They can also attend certificate courses with a range of different VET providers. And this qualification can also lead them on to do a diploma program and pursue employment in their chosen industry as well. So I really like this slide because it just gives a really good example about how students can start at a particular level, or how they can start in year 12 and actually, progress through the TAFE system and also into university. So not all students will finish their year 12 year and be equipped to go straight from year 12 into an undergraduate degree at university. And some students, they need to take a little bit more time to get there. Some students don't want to go to university, and that's perfectly fine as well. So some students will go from year 12 and move into a certificate course. So you can do a certificate 4 or a diploma straight from year 12. And then they might use that particular course to actually move on to a degree or move into an employment. I suppose the message there is it doesn't matter where you start, it matters where, what your goal is. And students who are in VCAL, or students who are unscored or perhaps don't get the score that they hope that they'd achieve in year 12 can still achieve what they want to achieve. It just might take them a few steps to get there, but ultimately they can all end up in exactly the same position, which is really great. So this is a bit of a snapshot, and this is our destination data, and it shows where our 2020 students went. And this is fairly similar every year. So, we get about 50% of students who go on to do university after year 12. We have about 20 to 25% who go on into the TAFE sector. And at TAFE, they're doing anything from a certificate 4 to a diploma or even an advanced diploma. And then we have a small percentage of students who choose to do an apprenticeship or a traineeship after they finish year 12. Some students will take a gap year and travel and do a range of different things. But that's basically what our students end up doing every year. So there's not much of a difference every year. So the numbers are always around that. So you can see that, really only around 50, in this case, 58% of our children go on to go straight from year 12 into university. And, there's a range of different options that they can achieve after they finish year 12. So when it comes to making decisions, I know that can be a little bit daunting, but my message would be that students should choose those subjects that they're good at. They should, really, speak to their teachers and find out where their strengths are. And in all cases, just think about what you're good at. Have a think about what your goal might be upon completion of school, where you'd like to end up. Think about things like prerequisite subjects. They're subjects that you need to do or that you must do in year 11 and 12 if you're going to go to a university course. All of that information is available to students from now. And so they should talk to their careers teachers at their school or, they're always welcome to email us as well. So yeah, just in summing up, when it comes to choosing your year 11 and 12 students, do what you enjoy, do what you're good at, reflect on your study interests, do those subjects that are going to help you meet your goals, the subjects that are going to help you meet your prerequisites, and also, have a look at the VTAC website and all of those prerequisite subjects, and also other rules and regulations that you need to access courses are all going to be there as well.
Thanks, Josie. Can I just, before I start my section, if you have any questions, can you please use the question and answer function, which you should be able to access through the webinar. When we get to the end of this evening, we will answer those questions. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the VCAL transition that occurs from next year to 25. Very briefly, if your son or daughter is contemplating VCAL, it's important that you kind of understand this information, because from next year until 24, 25, there's going to be a gradual transition out of VCAL and into what's going to be called, I think, something like vocational specialisation, a VCE vocational specialisation. They haven't kind of clarified that name, but they're heading towards a kind of integration of VCAL into VCE. And you can see here that if you enroll in VCAL next year, that's what you will enroll, you'll start in. But as you move into 23, you'll be then enrolled into a vocational specialisation, which will get you that award. I guess what I would say to you is, if you are contemplating VCAL, just rest assured that the transition will be smooth, and we will make sure that you comply with the new certificate. And VCAR are very aware of the fact that transition needs to be as smooth as possible. There's also, of course, the VCE pathway. That is the pathway that most of our students start in. Most of our students who come to us from year 10 indicate that they would like to pursue a scored pathway. And of course, some of our students stay in that, most of our students stay in that scored pathway, but some of our students during their 2 years moved out of a scored pathway and into a VCE pathway. You can see that from this slide that in year 11, most of our students will complete 12 Unit 1-2 courses or subjects to get a total of 12 in year 11. and most of our students will complete 5 units, that is unit 3, 4s in year 12, to end up with a total of 10 in year 12. That gives them a combined total of 22 units. Now you can see in my last dot point here, students need at least 16 units over those 2 years. So our students certainly have the opportunity to complete much more than 16, and they must pass 3 out of the 4 units of English or English language or literature or EAL. I'm just going to briefly talk a little bit about study scores and ATAR. I think Josie's kind of already been through the notion of VCE, VET and VCAL, so I'll leave that one. Yeah, talking a bit about the unscored and scored in the VCE, there is a difference, of course. If you take an unscored pathway, then you're not required to submit work for ranking purposes. So one of the things about the VCE, if you're doing a scored course, is that we are in the business of ranking you. That's part of the notion of an ATAR. So we need to rank you against other students, and to do that, you need to sit relatively rigorous and I guess time tests, SACs, which are done under the same conditions as everyone else. However, if you're doing an unscored pathway, then there is a much more flexibility around the assessment. We don't need to rank you according to performance against other students. We're just looking for achievement of an outcome. And you can see for the outcome, most of our VCE units have 2 or 3 outcomes that need to be achieved. They can be achieved using a variety of components. They can be both summative and formative, things like classwork, project work, oral written presentations, and also, I guess, more formal SACs, which are, I guess, the equivalent of a test. However, if you're doing a scored assessment, then I guess the notion there is that those assessments must be completely transparent. That is, they must be fair. Every student must be doing them under the same circumstances and conditions. And in unit 3 and 4, so in year 12 particularly, we report those scores to VCAR. So in year 12, your subject teachers will provide VCAR with numerical data about how you've performed in school assessed tasks. And you'll also, of course, do an end of year exam, which will count for 50% of your final score. Whereas in unit 1 and 2, which is predominantly year 11, we will not report to VCAR scores. We'll simply report satisfactory or not satisfactory completed. I'm going to hand back to Josie now.
Okay, we're going to talk about the ATAR calculation, so how the ATAR is calculated. Let's move to the next slide. Yep. Okay, so the ATAR, what is it? So the ATAR is actually a tool for tertiary selection based on the relative performance in VCE. So basically it's a rank, it's not a score. So it's not your student's VCE score, and it's not defining of who they are. So their score does not define who they are. It's just their rank. So it's a tool that allows universities to actually admit entrance into their courses. Move on to the next slide. So the ATAR is a percentile rank. For example, an ATAR of 60 means that the student has performed better than 60% of their year 12 group that year. So how the ATAR is calculated, basically the students will receive a study score for all of their subjects based on their school-based assessments and also their exams at the end of the year. Those will be scaled according to a range of different factors. The scaled scores are then added together to come up with an aggregate. So an aggregate is a combination of all of the students' scored scaled results, and then the ATAR is derived from that aggregate score. So why there isn't an ATAR of 100? So the highest ATAR score that you can get is 99.95. And that's because the ATER is a percentile ranking, so it ranks you against everyone else in your Year 12 group. And the ATER represents the percentage of people that you performed higher than. So therefore, it's statistically impossible for students with the highest result to perform themselves. So just some key points there. The ATAR is produced from your aggregate. To achieve this, all aggregates are placed in order and assigned to a percentile scale. And the lowest ATAR you can receive is 0, and the highest you can receive is 99.95. So to qualify for an ATAR through VTAC, you must achieve study scores in at least 4 Units 3 and 4 studies, including, and one of those needs to be from the English group. So that could be English language, or literature. So the calculation of your ATAR begins with your VCE study scores, which are provided by VCA. VTAC then scales these scores to ensure fairness. And so, for example, a student who does further maths as opposed to a student who does maths methods, they would scale those scores based on a range of different factors. And so in most cases, students who do a maths methods might be scaled up. And that's just to produce fairness across all of the subjects that students do. And then the aggregate is created by adding up your primary 4, which are your highest scaled subjects, one of which must be English, either English literature or English language, and then the next 3 highest VTAC study scores permissible. And for students who do more than 5 subjects, so there are students who choose to do 6 subjects, they'll receive 10% of any 5th or 6th permissible scaled study subjects as well. So after your study scores are scaled by VTAC, they calculate your aggregate. Then the total of your permissible contributes to your ATAR. But it's also just be aware of all the rules and regulations against combination of permissible studies. So there are some subjects that that you can do that don't give you a study score, but they also contribute to your ATAR, and usually you get a 10% increment for those subjects. So your aggregates are ATAR. So once the cohort's aggregates are calculated, they're placed in order. So if you can imagine like a huge number line, and so students, and they'll be in intervals of 0.05, which converts to ATAR scores. So your aggregate is the total of your permissible scaled study score, which can range from 0 to 210. So 210 is the highest score that you could get. And a student who receives an aggregate of 210 would typically receive an ATAR score of 99.95. And so the group of students with the highest score will be 99.95, and any ATARs that are below 30 are usually reported as less than 30 on their printed ATAR statements.
I'll jump in now.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, Josie.
Yep.
Yeah, so I guess what Josie was talking about there is kind of graphically shown in this scale. I guess I'd also say that there's a lot of information being thrown at you here, and please rest assured that when you're coming to subject selections and interviews, the person that's working with you will make sure that we're enrolling you in courses that are going to meet the requirements, and also we'll be talking to you about your pathway plans, and we'll be talking to you about kind of subjects that you'll need to do to ensure that you remain eligible for those. So we've spoken about study scores. Study scores are created for Unit 3 and 4 subjects. Now, some of your sons and daughters as Year 11s next year may indeed opt to do a Unit 3-4, or if you're in the Salt and Light program, you may in fact do 2 Unit 3-4s. And if you're the parent of a current Year 11, they'll obviously be doing, if they're doing VCE, they'll be also talking about study scores. And I think it's important to understand that a study score is given the scores are between 0 and 50. And that study scores are not an indication of a percentage. So if you get a study score of 30, that does not mean that you've kind of scored 60%. It simply means that you are smack bang in the middle of the distribution of study scores across a particular subject. And obviously, as you head to the right of that curve, you start to get higher scores. So when you get into this kind of 40 plus range, we're now talking about quite a small number of students in a particular study will get a score over 40. Typically, it's somewhere around 8 or 9% of everyone in the state who studies a particular subject. Let's say it's my favourite subject, PE. The people that get a score over 40 are in this part of the curve, not too many. The majority of students in a study are going to get somewhere between 35 and 25, depending on how well they perform. And for those mathematicians amongst you, study scores are calculated with an average of 30 or a mean of 30 and a standard deviation of 7. And you can see the maths behind that as you start to move further along that curve. Obviously, about 95% are within those ranges, and obviously the vast majority are going to fall within the curve there. I think that's important to understand. You don't need to understand the maths behind it, but you should understand the fact that a study score is an indication of where you lie along that continuum. And as Josie was mentioning, I think this is a visual around how the ATAR is calculated. So this student has undertaken 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 subjects. You can see that they got a VCE score in the VCE study column. So literature counts as the English, and then the next best scores are scaled scores, are specialist maths. I'm talking about the VTAC scaled score now. Specialist maths was scaled from 36 to 47. Philosophy went from 47 to 47.46, and so on. You can see the worst score, which was still a pretty good score, was 44.95. So the first 4 scores are added together, and then 10% of this 5th score, 4.49. And then this student also did an approved higher education study score, which contributed another 5 points to the aggregate, a very big aggregate, 194.65, which gave them an ATAR of 99.20. That's an extremely high ATAR. I'll speak about, I'll hand over to you again. Sorry, Josie.
That's all right. So this is an example of another student. So this student has completely different subjects, but you can see has done 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 subjects. And you can see their study scores and also their scaled scores that were given to them from VTAC. And so, and this student chose to do a VET course as well. And so that course that student did in 2017 was also, actually this student did a VCE subject in 2018 and also a VET course in 2017. So both of those subjects were actually added to this student's ATER calculation. And this student, even though Willow did a range of different subjects, and some of these subjects were scaled down slightly, that she also ended up with a really high ATAR. So Willow received an aggregate of 173.3, which also converted to an ATAR score of 95.75.
And I'll speak about Trent here. Trent didn't know what he wanted to do. He chose kind of a wide range of studies, but he chose subjects that he felt he was going to be good at and that he would enjoy. I would say, when you're thinking about subjects, you're going to be doing them for 2 years, and you're going to be sitting in classrooms engaging in the content for 2 years. So it is really important that you choose subjects that you feel you're going to enjoy. That is absolutely critical. Trent chose those subjects. You can see that some of his subjects were scaled down. In fact, most of his subjects were scaled down. but he did particularly well in them. Those scores are solid. They're not fantastic, but they're solid. He did really well in health, for example. And he ended up with an aggregate of 135.83. So that again is adding the first 4 and 10% of the last 2. Ended up with a study score of an ATAR of 78.7. That's, Josie, that's going to be a relatively good score and going to provide him with a number of attractive options, I would think.
Yeah. So here's Preeta, and Preeta, she did an approved education study and performed very well in that study, and results in higher education studies can contribute towards an increment of 5%. So for example, a student, this particular student might have done a vet course that was not scored, but she still received a score of 5, which contribute towards her ATAR. And so Preeta ended up with an aggregate of 196.61, which is a really high aggregate, and in fact, a really high ATAR score of 99.4 as well.
And again, another student here, based on interest, he chose 4 studies that were scaled up, even though he wasn't interested in them. And I guess the illustration here is that you can see that Ravan here has chosen subjects that he thought were going to be scaled upwards, and they were. But unfortunately for Revan, he did not score particularly well in those studies. So he may have chosen specialist maths, and really it was a bad choice because he really struggled in that subject. You can see he's chosen algorithmics, likewise really struggled. So even though the majority of them were scaled up, you see Chinese, for example, was scaled up significantly. He ends up with quite small, poor scaled scores, which ended up with an aggregate of 98.6, which ended up as an ATAR of 49.15. That's not such a great outcome. So the message from this slide, I think, is to kind of take the thoughts out of, in terms of, take out the thought that scaling up or down is going to affect your study score. What's most likely to affect your scores are how well you do in them. So if you're choosing further maths because you're not suited for math methods, but you get a really good score in further maths, that's going to be a much better outcome than if you chose math methods and got a poor score. In year 11 and 12, we will provide students with, we in year 11 in particular, will get students to work through a process that's assists them to kind of think about their post-school destination. We also start to think about, the nature of study scores that people can expect based on performance, both in academic testing and as we work through semester 1 and 2 next year. And in year 12s, they will be provided with an estimated ATAR based on what happens in year 11. So we'll look at exam results, we'll look at scores in school-based assessment, and we'll provide them with an estimate. Now, it's obviously not definitive, but it does give students a bit of an indication about how they might be tracking. So I just thought I'd, before we open up for questions and answers, and please, as we're talking, if you want to type in your questions, you can start doing that now. But if you're a year 11 student next year, I would strongly encourage you to head to our website, and you'll see in the class of 2023, there's a whole range of information there, which is going to help you kind of decide the sorts of subjects that you might be interested in doing. This is our first webinar, but over the next week, we have a number of webinars. Tomorrow, a general college information webinar, which is not around what Josie and I have spoken about. It's more around the whole college. And then next week, we head into specific learning area webinars. So information around religious education and language. And when we speak about language, we're talking about particularly the English subjects as well as Italian. Then we have a maths and science, VCAL and VET, personal development and humanities, and finally visual performing arts and technology. So normally tomorrow night we'd all be on site and you'd have an opportunity to go and talk to learning area conveners, students, etc. Of course, in this environment, we're not able to do that. So the webinars will give you an opportunity to listen to some presentations and get an opportunity to ask questions. Of course, you're more than welcome to contact the college at any time to request information around particular subjects. And there's some information here around the information that's required in terms of enrolment. If you're a year 12 parent next year, then you'll find, again, there's some information that will help you as we head into making subject selections for year 12 in 2022. Because your son and daughter is already on site, that's slightly simpler process because we can easily reach you and you know how to find us as well. But there will be a day on the 25th of August where current year 11 students will have the opportunity to book an interview and work with our staff to make sure their course is right for next year. I'm just trying to go back to my presentation. Yeah, so the webinars I've been through. I guess if you're a current year 10, we will be conducting interviews at the college on the 11th of August for North Keilor students and parents, and Caroline Springs St Albans parents will have the opportunity to meet with us on the 18th of August. You should have been provided with an opportunity to book those 15-minute subject selection meetings. I'm not sure whether they'll be face-to-face or remote. I'd imagine that we will be in the remote environment still, but we're not sure. We'll have to wait and see how that goes in terms of the COVID restrictions. Josie, have you got anything you'd like to add before we head to questions and answers?
No, I think we're good to go to questions and answers.
Okay. So I can see there's a number of questions that have already been posted. Firstly, can this slide be sent to parents? We'll put this on our website, Bill. So if you go on to the both the class of 22 and the class of 23, we'll make sure that this presentation is available on that site. Other scaled scores out of 100 is the next question. All of the study scores are out of 50. So regardless of a VCE score that a student achieves, the study score is out of 50. I believe that specialist maths may be scaled sometimes above 50, not much above 50, but most of the scores most of our scores, and most of the scores in Victoria lie somewhere between 25 and 35. Exceptional scores start to head into the 40s, and well below average scores dip down below kind of 20. Is religion mandatory? And if you do half a semester religion and the other half you choose to do another subject like psychology in year 11, what should you choose in year 12? That's a good question, Rini. Religion is mandatory. So in year 11 next year, most students you get the opportunity to choose either half, like you said, like do a half a year of religion and a half year of something else. What that does is allows the student to have a look at psychology, let's say, they do it for half a year, and that would allow them to do it in year 12 if they wanted to. But basically, year 11 is about looking at a number of different subjects and then honing them down to 5 subjects in year 12. Darcy, do you want to answer the next one?
I can't see them on my end.
Okay. It says, if a student wants to do an exam outside of school, e.g. piano exam, does that contribute to their ATAR? I can have a go at that and you can have a go at it first and I'll see if I can add to it.
Well, only if it's an approved VCE subject. So some students do exams outside of school, so they might do a language, and that does contribute to their ATAR. So the answer is it would need to be an approved VCE course.
Mm.
Do you agree with that, Jamie?
Yeah, I do. We'd have to kind of look at, you'd have to supply us with a level of exam, and then we could verify that with VCAR as to whether it's going to contribute to an ATAR. I would say that we are offering VCE music and vet music. So if your son or daughter is a particularly talented musician, that might be something to consider, because that will leverage their ability and talent, and it can result in a good study score. If a student is going to do the Salt and Light program, and if a student is doing the Salt and Light program, they would have been given a kind of letter and of invite to participate. The appointment booked on the 5th of August, yes, that you will not then need to come back on the 11th. So we'll do all of the subject counselling on the 5th of August for those particular students. Josie, is Italian the only language offered?
It's the only language that's offered at school. And as I mentioned earlier, some students choose to do a subject outside of school. And as long as the school knows about it and that information is passed on to us, then that contribute towards their ATER as well.
Yes. Does applied RE affect your ATAR score? I might just go back to a couple of slides to try and answer that. So the applied RE does not count as a scored vet. However, it would sit somewhere in this 5th or 6th subject if you completed it at year 2 level. And then what would happen would be that they would, it's kind of a little bit difficult to explain, but they would add up the primary 4. So, I'm trying to do that quick addition, but let's say that's somewhere around 195, let's say, for this student. They would then, I'm trying to work out now, they would then give you, they would find the average study score here of these scores, and then they would give you 10% of that aggregate, of that average, I should say. I don't know if I've explained that very well, but suffice to say that if it's not scored, Josie, you might want to jump in here as well.
Yeah, so basically they look at your other scores and they give you an average. So, if you're achieving an average of, say, 45 across all of your other study scores, you get 4.5 added to your aggregate. So it's basically 10%.
And I think, thanks for doing that, Josie. You explained it much better than I did. I think the other thing to kind of get your head around is when we say a 10% increment, we're not talking about a 10% on your ATAR. We're talking about 10% on the aggregate. So I think some people think that they're going to get an extra 10% of this number. In fact, they're getting a 10% of the aggregate. Whereas external vet subjects held, for example, multi-industry pathways program. Look, I can't answer that for every vet subject. I'd have to kind of have that question from you more personally, but our external vets are held in multiple locations. They might be at other schools within the BVC cluster. They might be at a TAFE campus. It really does depend on the course. I can't guarantee that they're going to be all local. So if you are doing an external vet, you kind of need to think about how you might get there. The other thing I'd say is that if you're doing an external vet, you must be doing VCAL. So if you're thinking about doing an external vet course, plumbing, industry pathways, etc., then you would need to do the VCAL. Josie, can a student do 2 vet courses?
You can as part of, or actually you can as part of your VCE as well, as long as they are an internal vet course, and as long as they are not a full day program as well. So yes, so the answer is yes, you can do 2 vets if you choose to. And all VCAL students will be doing 2 vets as well.
One from Sarah, I did a vet subject this year and will finish it next year in year 11. If I do unit 3, 4 for VCE subjects like health, does that mean I can only do 3 subjects in year 12, or do I have to do a minimum? I think what you're saying there, Sarah, we would, yeah, you would finish your vet next year as a year 11, which would give you the equivalent of one year 12 subject. Okay, we would still ask you to do 5 subjects in year 12. So that would maximize your opportunities for those 5th and 6th subjects like we've got down here. But Sarah, when we do our subject interview with you, we'll kind of make sure that we talk you through that, and we make sure that when you're selecting subjects, you're leaving the opportunity for a 5th subject in 2023. Can a student do a language outside of school, and can this become one of their 5 subjects? Josephine, we'd need to talk to you more specifically and individually about that at your subject selection interview. It would depend a little bit on, I guess, when your son or daughter gets to year 12, we'd want to be confident that their performance is going to be such that we have confidence that they're not going to be putting their VCE at risk. And we'd want to know, I guess one of our concerns is that we don't have much control over what's happening outside of school if the student's not doing it at our school. So we would need to talk to you more about that at a subject selection interview. And I guess, Josephine, also, we would need to track how your son or daughter is coping with the VCE as a year 11 student. Okay, Josie, you might then answer this one. Can religion subject count towards one of your top 4 subjects for your ATAR score?
Sure. So if you're doing a scored religion in year 12, it can definitely count towards your ATAR in year 12. So to do that, you would need to do 2 units of RE in year 11. So unit 1 and unit 2 to move into unit 3 and 4 in year 12.
Yeah, and that could be either religion and society, unit 3, 4 religion and society, or it could be unit 3, 4 text and traditions.
Yep.
Sorry, Josephine has just said VCE language subject. I think, Josephine, you might mean, that's Italian. I think that might be what you're asking. However, you might also be thinking the language subjects also include the English language and literature. But you might want to type in another question, Josephine, just to be a little bit more specific there. Okay, I'll try and answer this one. What is an approved higher education study? All right. So in that instance, we have students who maybe complete a unit 3, 4 study as a year 11, or maybe they complete 2 unit 3, 4 subjects if they're Salt and Light students. And then we have relationships with some universities which allow the student as a year 12 to undertake perhaps a couple of units of, let's say, health sciences or business at university. So they would do that externally. They would do it online. It wouldn't be run by our school. But if you completed those subjects to a satisfactory level, or I think it's satisfactory credit or distinction, then you would get that kind of number 5 added to your aggregate. I'm not sure I've answered that as well as I'd like, but basically the student does a university unit or 2 as a year 12 and gets credit for that. Josie, is that right? You want to add to that?
Yeah, it could also be a vet as well, that they could receive credit for a vet course as well.
Yeah, so an unscored vet.
An unscored vet.
Yeah. Okay, how does it work with external and internal vet? My son would like to continue with sports and rec in year 11 and choose building construction as well. Yeah, that is possible. However, Liam, if your son would then need to be involved in the VCAL program. So they could do sport and recreation as a vet in year 11, but in order to do the building construction, they would need to enter the VCAL, which would end up being the VCE vocational pathway in 23.
Yeah, and that's because that I think I believe that's a full day course.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's why you need to be in VCAL to do that.
But again, we can talk to you much more about that, Liam, when we go through the subject interviews. Can you talk about more about this external vet courses? Okay, I'll try that, and then Josie, you might want to add. When I say external vet courses, we're talking about courses that are not run on site at CRC Sydenham. So for example, at CRC Sydenham, we offer things like hospitality, baking, signage, picture framing, furnishing, lab skills, sport and recreation. We have salon assistant, community studies, sport and recreation. And we run a large number of vet courses on site. Now, because they're on site, there's a couple of advantages. One, they're going to be cheaper than an external vet. We will not be charging full tote odds for CRC Sydenham students who are doing vet courses on site. Secondly, students will do them in our vet block, which means that they run from about 150 to 520. So they don't interfere with a VCE timetable, for example. The other advantage of an internal vet course is a VCAL student can use that as a work placement. So a number of our VCAL students might do, let's say, baking all day Wednesday, and that counts as a work placement as well as a vet course. If we're talking about external vet courses, what we're talking about there are subjects that are run by organisations that are not us. So as I've said, things like plumbing, building construction. There are the myriad of them: multi-industry pathways, screen acting, animal studies. There's a lot of external vets. They can only be offered to students who are undertaking the VCAL, because that means they're out of the school for the whole day. They are quite expensive, so I think our levies for external vets are $1,500, and that's a deposit. So sometimes they actually are more expensive than that. So if you're thinking about external vet courses, that's fine, and we're happy to talk to you about that. But we would need to be sure that you're undertaking that for the right reasons. Josie, I'm going to hand to you because I need to take a drink. Can any subject be dropped in Year 12?
Sorry, what was that? Can
any subject be dropped in Year 12?
So if you're talking about going from Year 11 into Year 12, you can drop your subjects. The only subject that you can't drop is English, obviously, because you need to do an English subject, whether that's English language, or literature. That's the only subject that you can't drop in Year 12. So English is going to be the most important subject. Apart from that, if you change your mind and you start something in Year 11 and decide not to continue with it in Year 12, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, sometimes we have students who decide that they might do health and human development or business management in Year 12 without doing it in Year 11. That's generally okay. If you're thinking about doing math methods in Year 12 and you haven't done it in Year 11, that's not okay, because some subjects are more sequential than others. And it's always an advantage to have done, excuse me, it's always an advantage to have done a subject in Year 11 going into Year 12, but it's not always compulsory. What does doing a VCE subject in Year 10 affect? I think by that, Juliet, you're talking about if your son and daughter's currently doing Unit 1 and 2 subjects in Year 10, we would, provided they are passing those subjects and showing competence in those subjects, we would allow them to do that subject in Year 11 as a Unit 3-4. And what that would then mean is that they would need to pick up another subject in Year 12, so they end up with 6 subjects. I hope I've answered that question. If not, please let us know. Okay, Josie, do you want to answer this one? When do students need to decide if they're doing a scored or unscored VCE?
Well, basically at any time. So some students come into Year 12 knowing that they want to do an unscored program. And the reasons that they might consider doing an unscored program is because they know that university isn't for them, or maybe they know that when they finish school they're going to join the workforce, or they're going to do an apprenticeship or something like that. So some students come in knowing that they want to do an unscored program, and that's perfectly fine. Some students will do a scored program, right through year 11 and year 12, and then, right at the end, just before exam time, they decide that they're not going to university and drop down to an unscored program. So really anytime during the 2-year program.
Yeah, Josie, we've just kind of analysed our year 12 semester 1 reports. We've looked at how students have been performing, and we have had conversations with those students and their parents around the fact that by the middle of year 12, we generally have a pretty good idea about how students are tracking towards an ATAR. And sometimes at that point of the year, we're certainly not compelling students to go unscored, but we do have a pretty serious conversation about, look, we think it's time to really seriously consider that option. Is Vet Allied Health internal or external? That's an interesting question. It's actually run on site, so you might think it's an internal, but it's actually run external of the college. We don't provide the trainers or the teachers, so we count it as an external vet. Will there be a link to this video presentation? Yes, we'll put that on our website. What is Salt and Light? Okay. Salt and Light program was introduced about 3 years ago. We decided that we would use our academic testing data and information from the year 7 to 10 colleges about students who are identified as potentially able to accelerate. By that I mean they get the option to do 2 Unit 3-4 subjects in year 11, and then 4 Unit 3-4 subjects in year 12. So it's currently, there's about 20 students who we've identified. We keep it relatively small. Those students have been invited to apply. And that's based on, as I said, academic testing data, as well as recommendations from the 7 to 10 colleges. Will students currently in year 11 have an interview with a teacher to confirm their subject selection? Yes, every student on the year 11 students on the 25th of August, which is a Wednesday. The year 12 students on that day will be doing their English orals, so it's a non-teaching day, and all year 11 students will be allocated an interview with a member of the, I guess, the school leadership, which could be a learning area convener, a cluster coordinator, myself or Josie, and that will be around kind of looking at, or what will happen before then is that students will get a subject selection form. They'll have conversations with their current teachers about recommendations to subjects in year 12, and then we'll formalise that in an interview with the student, as well as parents. Parents are invited to come to those. Again, last year we ran them remotely. Again, by the 25th of August, who knows where we're at, but that may well be on site at the college. Okay, if you're doing a maths methods 3-4 in year 11 and you want to do religion and society with another subject in year 11, do you have to continue RE scored, or can it be unscored? It's a complicated question, Patrick. If you have to, do you have to continue RE scored, or can it be unscored in year 12 for the extra? So we're doing something. Oh, Patrick, I'm going to have to get you to talk to me about that. I think what you're saying is, well, certainly in year 12, you can do scored RE, and you could do an unscored RE. By that, we do things like RE and art. We have some internal subjects that are not counting for a score. But your question in year 11, because of RE, how can you continue that subject if you're currently doing? Yeah. Patrick, I'm going to have to I'm not quite sure of your question there, so I'm going to have to get you to talk to me about that more individually, to be honest. Is religion compulsory in year 12? If I was to complete half a year of religion and society and then environmental science, how would that work for year 12? Okay, so Mia, you would get your religion and society done in year 11, and then it sounds to me like you would do one of our unscored REs in year 12. Those are only half a line, so it would mean that you would do 3 lessons a fortnight of RE. It would not be scored. There would not be a rigorous assessment. And then you would have the half a line off to do private study. Can a year 11 student do unit 3-4 for 2 different subjects? Can they choose further maths and math methods 3-4 in year 11? The short answer to that one is no. They would, if they're thinking of doing math methods, they would need to do math methods 1-2 in year 11, unless, Rennie, they've done math methods 1-2 in as a year of 10. But again, we would need to talk to you more about that individual circumstance at your subject interview. What is involved in the multi-trade program? What trades are offered? Josie, are you able to help there?
Yeah, so the multi-trade pathway program is a combination of different trades. So I think they do electrical, plumbing, and building and construction. And the idea is that they do a vet course in year 11 that allows them to access all of those different areas with the option of moving into a school-based apprenticeship in year 12. So the idea is that they try all of those in year 11, and when they move into year 12, they choose one of those pathways. And obviously they need to be in the VCAL program to do this. They would move into a school-based apprenticeship, which would mean that they continue on with their chosen field, whether it's electrical, plumbing, or building and construction, and they actually start an apprenticeship in one of those areas when they're in year 12.
Simon, good question, this one. I'm doing VC Business Management 1-2 this year. If I do not continue to do 3-4 next year in year 11, can I then finish it in year 12? The answer to that one is yes, you can. And that's perhaps not a bad idea. So you might kind of put it on hold for a year and then look at some other subjects in year 11 and then come back to it in year 12 if you so desire. What is the absolute last day to determine your year 11 subjects? Okay. The absolute last day to determine your year 11 subjects is when you have your interview. So the day when you interview with our staff, which will be the 11th or 18th of August if you're a year 10. I just want to say that that's really important to get those subject selections right at the start, because what we do with that information is that we create our classes. So if 130 people choose to do health, then we create enough classes to fit that group, that number of students. If only 6 people choose a particular subject, the chances are that subject won't run. So it's important that you make those choices and are clear that that's what you're going to do. Having said that, we do have some students who want to change subjects towards the end of the year, and that sometimes is possible, but it's not always possible. So you need to understand that once you've selected subjects in August, they're kind of what you're going to be doing, unless there's really good reasons. Josie, I don't know the answer to this one. You might better help. Is an ATAR only relevant for unis in Australia?
Yes. Yeah. So usually if students want to go overseas and study at an overseas university, they have a range of different entry a different assessment or something similar. So the ATAR is relevant for all universities in Australia. But yeah, if you want to do something overseas, you'd have to contact that university to find out what their entry requirements are, because they're all going to differ.
What is the difference between VCE General Maths, Electrical Focus in VCAL and VCE General Maths? Okay, so if you're doing VCAL, you can opt, instead of doing VCAL numeracy, you can opt to do General Maths. And it's particularly designed for students who are doing that electrotechnology course, because the mathematical requirements in that particular course are slightly more advanced than the VCAL numeracy. So you would end up with 1 unit of general maths over the year. Whereas if you do VCE general maths, then you're in the VCE stream, and that's kind of like 2 units. How many kids from each of the 3 campuses are in Salt and Light? Look, I can't give you absolute numbers, but I can say that, you know, there are more Year 10 students at Caroline Springs than St Albans, for example. So there are more students from from Caroline Springs than St Albans, just because there's a greater sample size. So we don't go, you know, they're going to be 10 from each school or 5 from each school. We just look at the top 20 students based on our data, and it doesn't really matter what campus they're at. It's basically how they've scored. And as I said, because St Albans has a smaller number of Year 10s, they tend to have a smaller group in Salt and Light, and Caroline Springs is our largest campus, so they tend to have, well, this year they had more. And that's just statistics, I guess. Can you do a VCE subject in VCAL? Yes, you can. We have had students who've done some VCE subjects as a VCAL student. We have to sit down and make that work on the timetable. But certainly, as you move into 23, one of the philosophies of the move away from VCAL into VCE vocational is to allow students in that vocational stream to access more, if you like, traditional VCE subjects. So that is certainly a possibility. If a student does Unit 3-4 religion as part of a Salt and Light, do they still do religion in Year 12? Again, Josephine, we'd need to talk to you more about that at your subject interview. The Salt and Light students do have a slightly different requirement in terms of religion, but we could talk to you more about that in the interview. My daughter is doing a 3-4 subject this year in Year 11. Yep. We thought she would have 1 less subject next year, so she would concentrate on the 3-4 subjects next year. Has this recently been changed? No, that's not a recent change. That's always been the case. So the Year 12 students in 22 will be required to complete 5 scored subjects, and they will have 6 subjects at the end. Having said that, again, I'm happy to talk to you individually about that. One of the things that we can talk about is looking at how your daughter has performed at the end of the year. So if we look at your study score at the end of the year and it's particularly high, or it's, you know, well above average, we can start to talk about the advantages or disadvantages of doing 4 or 5 subjects. But we wouldn't be prepared to make that decision in August. We want to see how the study score pans out. One of the things, for example, I'll give you an example, and I'm not suggesting this is your daughter, but there's sometimes the students who do a 3-4 subject in Year 11 and they don't get the score they want, and so they repeat that subject. Now, that sometimes can happen. And again, I'm not suggesting that's your daughter, but that might be an option. Sometimes the study score that students get in Year 11 is not very good, and therefore we would want to make sure that they're undertaking 5 subjects to ensure that they're maximising their ATAR. But as I said, we have had instances where students in Year 11 have done really well in their 3-4 subject at the end of the year, And then we would sit down with the family and kind of talk about how that might work. I hope I've answered that question. What subjects do you offer relating to the performing arts industry? Josie, can you answer that one?
Performing arts. So there's theatre studies, there's music performance,
Dance.
dance, and also what's that, the audio subject as
Yeah,
well.
so I'll try and think too now, Josie. But
Yeah.
we've got VCE music.
Yep.
We've got vet music. We've got vet technical production, which is kind of
right.
back of house.
Yep.
We've got theatre studies, and we've got vet dance.
Yes.
I hope that's answered the question.
Yes.
Hello, we have not allocated a subjects learning meeting for August 11th. How do we book a 15-minute time slot? Booking system says there's no time slots left. Okay, thanks, Diane. Diane, can you contact the college? I would get that you ask for Gina Zumbo, and she will be able to help you with that. I hope that's answered your question. But rest assured, Diane, we will make sure that you get the opportunity to meet with us. Is VCE a more advanced English, which increases the ATAR, or is it English language? How do we choose? I'll have a start at this one, Josie, and you might jump in as well. Look, the English you decide to study will depend on a number of things. So, for example, literature in English literature is kind of for those students who are really interested in reading and analysing text. I guess it's a slightly more advanced form of or subject selection. VCE English is, if you like, most of our students do VCE English as their subject. I guess it's an all-round general course. And then English language is more about the structure of English language and kind of analysing the structure of the language. There's no right or wrong here. We kind of want to talk to you a bit more about the various strengths and weaknesses that your son or daughter has in that one. Josie, can you add to that?
Yeah, so I think, it's really important to understand the subject and what you're going to learn in the subject. Typically students who are very science-based tend to excel in English language, but that's not always the case. So I think it's just really important to know what the subject is all about, and to do your research, because English is so important and your English score is also so important. It's really important to do your research and to find out everything you can to ensure that you do choose the right English, regardless of whether it's scaled up or or scaled down. It's about choosing the right English that is suited to you. That's really important.
I'm going to ask if we can maybe, I've got about 6 or 7 questions to go through. I think if it's okay, we might stop it there. I'm aware of the time. How do we book for Year 10 subject selection interviews? You should have received some communication from the college about how to do that. But however, if you're not sure about that, can you please contact the college as soon as possible? Let us know what campus you're from, and we'll endeavour to ensure that you get that opportunity to book a time. I've not received subject selection form. Is there a due date to submit it, and will it be in time? So your subject selection forms would have gone to your current campus, and those campuses, we're working through those with your son or daughter. So I would defer to your current school. However, if you're not sure and still not satisfied with that, please contact us and we'll try and get one out to you. What technology IT subjects do you offer in year, I think you mean year 11? Josie, we can work on this one together because we'll have to remember it off the top of our head. When technology, IT, there are a number of VCE courses. So there's computing, there's data analytics, there's information technology and software.
Yeah.
And
also vet IT as well.
Yeah, so vet IT, there's vet IT, there's interactive and digital media. I would kind of refer you to our course handbook, which again is available. I'll try and share that. That's available on our website. Try and show where that is. No, that's not going to help you. While I'm doing that, Josie, is VCE English Unit 1 and 2? So I guess the question's there. Does that make sense, Josie?
So is the question, can you?
Yeah, is VCE? Go on.
I was just going to say you need to do 4 units of English. Yeah. So units 1 and 2 in year 11 and units 3 and 4 in year 12. So I'm not sure if the question is, can you do it complete it in year 11? And the answer would be no. So you need to complete 4 units.
Yep. So yeah, I mean, English 1 and another way to think about that question, English 1 and 2 is the first part of English, and then it leads into English 3 and 4. I think you probably said that anyway, Josie. But yeah. Just in terms of the course handbook, you can see the 2022 course handbook is here under class of 23. So when you're looking at that handbook, you'll see that it's a big document, but what we tried to do is kind of showcase all of the subjects that are available next year. And you'll also see on this website, there are under learning and teaching, learning areas overview. I think it's on this page. You'll see more information about each of the subjects under the headings of the particular learning areas. So that's another good place to have a look. Do they have to choose all of their subjects for year 11 and 12 already, or is that done by August 18? On August 18, what you need to do is choose your year 11 subjects. But obviously, as you're choosing those, you've got to have a mind for what you're going to do in year 12. So, that will be determined by your pathway, any prerequisites that might be required. Are you doing VCAL or VCE? As we talk to you about that, we'll make sure that you're not only getting a course for year 11, but you're getting a course that will lead into year 12. And finally, is it only unit 3-4 that counts towards the ATAR, Josie?
Yes. So it is unit 3 and 4. So your study scores are based on your unit 3 and 4 subjects, and your ATER is calculated from your unit 3 and 4 subjects.
Okay, it's been a long session, but hopefully it's been an informative session. There's a lot of information that we've thrown at you, and I would expect that you'd leave here going, oh, there's a lot of stuff there that you're not sure of, and we don't expect you to know all of this over the course of 1 hour. But hopefully what we have done is provided you with some information around the ATAR, around the subjects that are the selection process. Please rest assured that we'll work with you and your son or daughter over the next 2 years to ensure that we're maximising the opportunities that are available. And as I said right at the start, every student, every pathway. One of the things our college does really well is individualise and tailor programs to meet the needs of our students. So I'd like to thank all of you for attending. I appreciate the fact that you've taken time to listen to us. I'd like to thank Josie for all of her work, both prior to this and during this evening, and Shatil, who's our techie, who's been behind the scenes, ensuring that this webinar has run as smoothly as possible. So we'll stop that now, and thank you again, and good evening.